Hey guys, it's Beth and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm back with some love and devotion projects. And what I wanted to focus on today is how to use those full 12 by 12 page size images and the larger cut aparts that come in your pad, especially if you're not a 12 by 12 scrapbooker. I just wanted to show you some different ways to use those pages. I did, however, start with some 12 by 12 scrapbook pages, just because if you followed me, you know I am really hustling trying to get caught up on my scrapbooking from 7 years ago. Like, I'm trying to finish 2013 by the end of this year, 2020. So this was a full 12 by 12 image in the pad, and it's just this plain doily. There's nothing in the middle. And then it had like this ribbon detail and flowers at the top. So I did use that as a page background for this set of pages, and it just kind of made my pictures, you know, kind of decorated it around that heart. And I did use a bunch of other pieces from this pad. These are just some strips I cut. These are cut aparts. And then this is a label from the pink and red labels that I was using from my Stick Your Side of Crafting. So there were 2 of each images in this pad, and so I did use both of those to make some pages for me and my daughter. And then the third one I did had the border around it, and I really liked this bicycle, and so I decided to go ahead and do a page with this. And this is a single photo page, which I don't do very often, but I just took a bunch of other scraps, some strips that I had, and kind of backed those and then popped this up on some cardstock just so it kind of acted as a way to help that photo stand out. And then again, use some other scraps from the pad. And then this I fussy cut out of a cut apart, which I will talk more about later. So this was the full 12 by 12 image, and again there was another one of these, but I only needed it for one page. So this is a great way to show you how else you can use up a 12 by 12 image page even if you are not a scrapbooker. So these are the pieces that I had from this pad, from this particular page. So I kind of took this bottom half and cut it down so that they would fit some A2 size cards. And I ended up, I don't know why I cut it this way. I think I wanted to make sure that was on a card, and that made this piece a little shorter. So I backed it on some brighter pink cardstock just to fill in the gaps on the side. But I wanted the bicycle to be the focal point, and so I added a little cut apart from the pad as my sentiment here, and then I did use some glossy accent to accent some of the parts of the bike, and then I added some hearts up here and also added a little bit of glossy accents there. But so this is that bottom left corner of that 12 by 12 page. And then I also made a card using just this next little strip. I kept that frame kind of piece at the bottom, and then the Be Mine and heart envelope here were already part of the page. And then I just added another cut apart from the pad as my sentiment with a little strip behind it to help it, just to add a little bit more to it. And then this envelope full of hearts, I fussy cut out of another border strip, and then just have a couple other punched hearts to add some extra embellishments. And then on this one, I did ink up a lot of the lighter images with some pink chalk ink just to help it stand out from the other pinks in the card. And then that left me with just this little strip here at the bottom, which I haven't used yet. So then I also wanted to use, there was detail up here in this top right corner as well. So I also wanted to use it for a card, so I made it very similar to this one down here, just kind of moved things around. And again, added that envelope full of hearts and some other hearts, and then it inked everything up with that pink chalk ink. So those were the 3 pieces that I felt like I could get a good card out of. So then with what I had left, I realized this was a good size piece, and it was the perfect size for an A2 size card mat. So this is 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, so that will fit perfectly on an A2 size card, you know, leaving me a little bit of a border. And then this one I ended up punching a bunch of hearts out of because I wanted some red and some light pink just so I could add them, you know, to some of my cards. So this is what I haven't used yet. And I could always punch some more hearts out of these or punch something else, some flowers or whatever. Or if I needed some journal spots or, you know, something I could even stamp on some of this bigger parts, I could stamp a sentiment on or an image, you know, and use it on a card. Or it's big enough that I could also die cut a larger heart or something out of it. So I'm going to save these pieces just to use, you know, later on in case I need to punch or cut or stamp anything else. But this, you know, just shows you like I could, excuse me, get 4 cards out of this pad. So this one I'll have to add something too. But so that is another way that you can use up those big 12 by 12 images. And then there was one more like full 12 by 12 size image in the pad, and I had an awesome idea for it, like totally different than anything I'd ever done, and it didn't work. But I'm going to show you anyway. There was this image of the doily, and I thought, oh, like that would be cute as a little Valentine's themed puzzle for my girls, like just something different for them to do for Valentine's Day. And I had a deep cut blade for my silhouette that I've been wanting to use and just hadn't had, you know, the chance to really try it out yet. So I decided that I was going to do that. So I took some chipboard from my stash, and this is fairly heavyweight, but I wanted to make sure that my puzzle pieces were fairly stable and not just all bendy. And then I took my paper and Mod Podged it onto my chipboard. And then I put my seal coat over it, like one seal coat on, and then it was kind of streaky. So I ended up having to go over it again just to kind of even it out so that it had 2 coats of Mod Podge on the top. And so I put my deep cut blade in and followed, you know, whatever the cut directions were for the silhouette for the deep cut blade for chipboard. And it just cut through the paper. It didn't even like go into the chipboard at all in my first cut. So I'm like, all right, I have 2 shots at this. I have 1 more page. I did a little research and I increased the blade depth as like deep as long as it would go. And thought for sure, like, you know, fingers crossed, it's going to work this time. And it didn't. It ended up getting hung up like in the rollers. And so it would kind of like stutter. And then, so you can kind of, I don't know if you can see, it's got some offcuts, like where it ended up cutting over itself or it's off, I don't know. So try number 2 didn't work either. So I thought, well, I'm at least going to try and salvage my first one and use a craft knife and finish cutting. And about a couple hours in and a sore hand and 1 broken blade, I questioned, like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm not even going to continue on. And then my daughters came in and they're like, oh, are you making us a Valentine puzzle? Like, is that for us? They're like, that looks so fun. Are you, can we do it whenever you're done with it? And so I was just like, oh, okay. So I continued on because I thought, well, this would be a good exercise just to see if it works. And, the girls would enjoy the puzzle and I can at least share the idea with you all. And it it took a lot of elbow grease, a lot of patience and time to cut these. And I totally chewed up the pieces. I don't know how well that's going to show. So we did put the puzzle together, and I will show you that here. But the pieces don't fit together real well, since I've chewed them up, and it was hard to keep them together. But anyway, the girls appreciated it, and they still thought it was cool, but to me, it's fail. So... And I know partly where I messed up. I think I picked too thick of a piece of chipboard, even though this feels exactly what a manufactured puzzle piece feels like whenever you would buy them. And the fact that I put any coats of Mod Podge. I should have not put any coats of Mod Podge over the top of it. I should have just left it as a glue and been done. And then, because there's also glitter and some embossing elements on this page, so those three things I think just kind of screwed my chances, and it made it even hard to cut through with a craft knife. So anyway, lesson learned. I'm not blaming it on my silhouette. You know, and maybe the blade would have cut through had I known better what I was doing, but this was the first time I'd used it. So if you have any tips on using the deep cut blade and the silhouette, let me know. But still, this is definitely a usable idea, even if you don't have a silhouette. You can take your 12 by 12 piece and you could still, you know, glue it to a piece of chipboard, and then just either take really good scissors or maybe some tin snips or a craft knife, and you can just cut like wavy pieces, and then you just have to fit, you know, like the waves. It doesn't have to have like the interlocking pieces together. You could still just kind of cut random shapes that have to be matched up. So I still think it's a good idea. Just my execution was not quite up to par on this one, but I left it in again to show you the idea, and two, to show you that I fail at things all the time. Just a lot of times you don't see them because they're off camera and I don't have to share them with you, but I left this one in. So that is my, third idea on how to use your 12 by 12 pages. In the past, I have done some different things as well. I have, you know, used Mod Podge and attached them to some plywood and made signs, you know, framed and unframed signs with them. I have also attached them to, or, you know, adhered them to either a piece of chipboard or a thicker piece of cardstock, maybe just punch some holes in the top and put some twine or ribbon through and made wall hangings that way. And then I know others have talked about how they have bought those 12 by 12 like scrapbook page frames and then just put these images in a frame, and maybe you change them out seasonally, you know, and then it just kind of becomes a rotating piece of decoration for your home. So those are some other ideas. If you have any ideas that I haven't mentioned for these big pages, oh, the gift bags. I've seen people make the gift bags. I haven't tried that yet. And then I've also cut them down and like maybe just use the words or chop them up and use the different elements throughout, like cards and other scrapbook pages. So a bunch of ideas. If you have any additional ideas, leave them in the comments below so that we can all see them and have some different ways to use up those big full-size 12 by 12 images that seem to be in each paper pad, 12 by 12 paper pad. So I also wanted to talk about the bigger cut-aparts that don't necessarily fit on a normal card size. And again, if you're not a scrapbooker, how can you use those? So in my last video, I shared these two. This was a 6x6 8 cut-apart that I cut down. This was a 6x6 cut-apart that I just trimmed off the sides. And these are both on 5x7 size cards. So a little bit bigger card than I normally work with. Normally I work with a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. But every once in a while, just to use up the certain type of paper or a certain image, I will branch out to a 5x7 card. And then I also wanted to share, this was another one of the 6x6 cut-aparts. And again, I just shaved off a little bit of the side so it would fit on a 5x7 inch card. And then because it was only 6 inches tall, I added another like border up here. So I just took I think it's lattice, called a lattice border punch, and took some dark red cardstock and then just kind of used that as the border on the top and bottom. And then I did add some glossy accents on the letters of love just to kind of add some more detail to the card. This one, I was using scraps, and so I didn't have another scrap long enough of that dark red, but I did use some pattern paper that just has it's like dark red with pink dots, and then just ran it through my scallop border punch with the hole, like an eyelet lace type border punch, and then covered the seam here with some real thin pink heart washi tape. So same concept, just different borders. And again, this is a 5x7 size card. So I got 3 sets of the 5x7 cards using the bigger cut-aparts. This was actually part of a 6x8 cut apart. And it had like more flowers here to the side, and then it had like hearts floating out of the top of the jar. So I cut off the hearts and I trimmed this down so that it would fit on an A2 size card with a card mat behind it. So I did, and ended up cutting off the flowers here on the side, and then I was able to cut the hearts off at the top without, like, that was a clean cut. There was enough space in between those hearts and the jar that I could just get the jar. So then I took some of that pink heart washi tape and put it up here, like on the middle of my jar lid, like almost as if you were to like wrap ribbon or tie some ribbon around the jar lid, and then added a heart here that I actually fussy cut out of the hearts that were from the piece where they were coming out of the jar. And then down here at the bottom, just to kind of play on the flowers that were there, I added some flower sequins from my stash, just kind of layered them on there, just so it kind of took away from the fact that, the flowers were cut off. And so I did 2 of those. And then I had there were 2 more 6x6 cut aparts. And I took one of them I had already cut down and used in my scrapbook page as my title here, this You and Me. And so the other one I went ahead and cut down. I cut the top part off, and I can always use this as a sentiment on a card or in a scrapbook page or something. And then I just took the bottom half and left a little bit of the red border on it. So I had to trim part of it off just so it would fit my 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card. And then just added a sentiment, which was a border cut apart that I cut down from the pad. And then I just have some punched hearts kind of floating up this side, just to kind of balance it out. And I forgot on this first one to ink up the pink hearts a little bit so that they stood out. So the second one I did that, and you can tell big difference that they stand out a lot more. So another way to use the bigger cut aparts in a card. And then the last 6x6 cut apart I actually used on a scrapbook page. So this one I used the 6x6 cut apart. It was just like a doily, and I just used it as kind of a 3-sided frame for my focal point picture here. And then on this page, I did it a little bit different. I sliced it diagonally down the middle and then separated it so that it would actually frame the whole picture. So that was just 2 different ways to do that. So even if you have a 6x6 pad or a 6x6 cut apart in a 12x12 pad, and you are a 12x12 page scrapbooker, you can still use these cut aparts. You just kind of have to think about them a little bit different, maybe chop them up or use them as frames. So some different ways to use those. And just as a side note, here on these pages, you can see these were some of the label stickers that I used from the Stick Your Side of Crafting sticker sheets that I was trying to use up. Like here's some of the black, and then there's a couple of the pink ones in here too. So this was kind of how I started using those up and then finished them up on my other projects. So that is several different ways to use up the full-size images in your pad, as well as some of those larger cut aparts that don't fit a standard card size. So hopefully that gave you some ideas on how to use those. If you have additional ideas that I haven't either shown or shared, listed out, then please let us know in the comments below. Share your ideas and your knowledge. I know that we're all looking for different ways to use up those particular pages out of the pads that we're working on. So if you have any questions on anything, let me know. But I thank you guys so much for your time today, and I hope you're having a crafty week.